This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, when I invited Erin Fletter, founder and CEO of Sticky Fingers Cooking Schools, to join us as my rising star for this quarter, you may remember that she mentioned that she and her husband own a restaurant in Denver. Well, what modest Erin Fletter didn't tell us is that Barolo Grill is Michelin-rated and Denver's first and only recipient of Wine Spectator's Grand Award. That's a big deal. There are only 93 Wine Spectator Grand Award winners in existence in the entire world. And Fodor's Travel tagged Barolo in 2021 as one of 15 of the best Italian restaurants in the entire USA. Do you suppose it's safe to say that success runs in the Fletter family? I'm just saying. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on Sticky Fingers, and no doubt we'll be hearing more from Erin as they further develop the Sticky Fingers brand and have more to share with us. Today, we'll hear from Graham Chapman, someone who asked for my mentorship some 15 years or so ago when we first met and he was getting started at 919 Marketing. Over the years, Graham has become a dear friend, a true peer, and more recently, a trusted partner in Zor Forum. Graham recently exited 919 Marketing and has a lot of news to share today about all of that and more. But first, a quick reminder to hit the website at franchisetodaypodcast.com to pick up past episodes, show notes, make guest recommendations, and of course, drop a review if you'd be so kind. It helps me to hear from you, and it gives me ideas for topics that may be of interest. So do that for me, please, and it will be most appreciated. A quick break here, and I'm back to chat with Graham Chapman. Stay right there.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
We are all familiar with Vistage, YPO, and EO. Well, now comes Zor Forum, a somewhat similar type of executive group, but this one comes with a twist. Zor Forum groups are exclusively for franchisors. Imagine a peer group for sharing and networking on a platform built exclusively for franchise executives. Zor Forum members are afforded unparalleled access to best practices and some of the brightest minds within the franchising world through regular meetings and a dedicated communications platform. In this post-COVID world, a franchise-specific mastermind or peer group is an endeavor worth making time for. Zor Forum groups of 6 to 10 will bring leaders together that are in similar situations, but with exclusivity in terms of their competitive sets, so that each can openly help others benefit from their respective knowledge, perspective, and experience with no fear of competitive loss. Network, learn, strategize, and remain motivated along your journey. Join a peer group, not just any peer group. Join the only one designed for emerging franchisors. Join Zor Forum. Learn more at zorforum.com. That's www.zorforum.com. Graham Chapman is a PR, social media, and content marketing professional who has spent more than 15 years helping franchise brands reach, influence, and convert qualified customer and franchise sales leads. Graham has spent the last 15 years growing personally while contributing to the growth of the then family business 919 Marketing. After the introduction of private equity into the business and the recent merger with other firms, Graham took his exit from 919, assuming the role of CEO for Zor Forum. And if that's not enough, he's here today to share yet more breaking news about a couple of more feathers in his quiver. Graham Chapman, welcome to Franchise Today.
Stan, thanks for having me.
Great having you here, Graham. This is long overdue in my mind, but probably better that we waited until now because we're going to break some news here today, aren't we?
We are, man. It's time.
Before we get to the breaking news of the day, we have to roll the tape back, Graham, and do what I've done for every interview on Franchise Today since the beginning of time, and that's take my guests back to the moment in time that franchising discovered them. And in your case, that's a familial story, so why don't we pick up with that first and we'll roll out from there. What do you say?
Sounds good to me, man. So franchising found me by accident, kind of like everybody. Didn't stand up in second grade and talk about being a marketer and now an entrepreneur in the franchising space. As fortune would have it, my little brother, a lot younger than me, was playing on a Little League baseball team about 20 years ago. My dad was the coach of that team. He was also the founder of 919 Marketing, content marketing, PR, and digital agency that served the franchising space, still does. Of course, as a business owner, he couldn't convince anyone else to sponsor that team. So 919 Marketing was on the back of the jerseys. And it just so happens another franchise legend, a guy named Doug Shadle with Rhino 7 Consulting, his son was playing on that team. A guy named Joe Shadle, who is now working for his father at Rhino 7 too. So I guess family interactions in the franchising space endure. Long story short, asked my dad if he ever wanted to be in the franchising space or ever had been. The answer was no, but we're interested. Led to our first relationships with Senior Helpers and Doctors Express, now American Family Care. Helped those businesses take off. When I graduated college a few years after that, late 2000s, as your listeners know, not the best time to be entering the job market. My dad was kind enough to give me an opportunity to come in and try to figure out this whole franchising thing for 919 Marketing. Been proud to represent 919 for more than 15 years in the franchising space. And with that duration of time, I guess something went okay and it worked out all right for me working with my dad.
How about that? And so you were doing that until very recently. Is that not right?
That's right. So 919 took on a private equity partner a few years ago. Worked very well with them since 2020. My dad transitioned into a chairman of the board role earlier this year. There was a leadership change on the 919 side, and I was asked to take a different role, which I completely understand, very fair. But really, it put me in a position where it was no longer, I guess, the family business, so to speak. And I did love working in that family business environment and was proud to help grow that company for as long as I did. But with the changes that had occurred on the 919 side, I no longer felt obligated to be there. And there are so many different things I wanted to do in my own path that I wanted to chart. And it was the right time for me to move on to my next chapter here in the middle of 2024.
So in addition to all of that, Graham, you and I have had a friendship that goes back, I don't know, as long as I can remember. And we became associated in other ways with Zor Forum here in the last 4 or so years when Dave Pasgan brought that idea to the world. And you and I had a very similar reaction to what it was Dave was doing in the creation of Zor Forum. And we kind of invited ourselves in, didn't we? Actually, Dave invited us in, but it was our enthusiasm that caused him to invite us in. And as things do in franchising, one thing tends to lead to another or another or another. And now, with your exit from 919, you're not only the CEO of Zor Forum, but of late, just announced to me on Monday, you became a visionary partner as well with our partners in Zor Forum, or a couple of them, the Blue Maven organization. So we're going to talk some more about that and your new role as well as a coach at FranCoach has your plate pretty full, Mr. Chapman. We've got a lot to unpack here today, don't we?
We do. I feel like I'm one of many who sees all the different ways you can give of yourself, give back, do well by doing good in franchising. Of course, Stan, as you know and your listeners know, there are many ways you can get involved with the franchising community as a franchisor, a franchisee, as a supplier partner, and of course, as a broker, consultant, coach who helps aspiring business owners chart their own path in the franchising space. And I wear a lot of hats now in these different gigs, but I'm able to give back to so many that I know in the franchising space with all these different ventures I'm involved with.
Well, why don't we begin with Zor Forum, Graham, because that's something that we've been collectively working on for a little while, and give the audience a snapshot of what it is we're working at with Zor Forum, and then we'll step it up from there and hit some of the new milestones that we want to address with your visionary partner role at Blue Maven, as well as your coaching role at FranCoach.
On the Zor Forum side, look, I couldn't be more excited about the momentum and the buzz and just sort of the visibility we're gaining for what we're doing on the Zor Forum side. Having these YPO Vistage style mastermind groups built exclusively for the needs of franchise CEOs, founders, and executive leaders is something that's been desperately needed in the franchising space for many, many years. A platform through which all of our members gain direct access to the guidance, the tips, the resources, partner recommendations that they need to get where they want to go more quickly and make less mistakes simply from learning from what others have gone through. Coming together once a month in these Zor Forum groups to meet with 8 to 10 like-minded franchisors at similar stages of growth has just proven to be so exceptionally valuable to the dozens of members that we have in our community. And I'm excited about, Stan, what we just talked about earlier this week when we huddled for our annual planning meetings of the opportunity we have to attract more franchise luminaries like you, like me, like Dave, like so many awesome supplier partners and franchisor leaders who can serve as effective guides and Sherpas for these franchisors as our franchisees, the moderators themselves. And then, of course, any variety of emerging and established franchise leaders who want to follow those guides, those mastermind leaders, and learn from each other as peers to really maximize the value of their Zor Forum time.
So this might be an appropriate place to create a segue into the Blue Maven portion of our conversation today. And we can begin that, Graham, by having you explain how what you, Dave, myself, and our fourth partner, Eric Mayers, were working on by ourselves kind of opened up a little wider a year or so ago when we invited Blue Maven in. Talk about that, and then let's jump from there to yet another incestuous leap.
that I can. Incestuous leaps are what happens in the franchising space. Yeah, so obviously we are like many micro emerging franchisors, or we were, where we were trying to start something that we had a passion for, that we very much believed in, but we all had our day jobs, so to speak, and we weren't able to make progress as quickly as we wanted. A typical refrain for many in and around franchising. So Ashley Loza, one of the co-founders of Blue Maven, is a very good friend of mine, someone I've known for a long time. She worked at Raintree and FranDevCo and other reputable organizations in franchising prior to starting Blue Maven, because she saw this need for busy executives, busy founders, usually more visionary CEO minds who have a big idea and a big vision, but not the skill set nor the appetite to do the granular manual integrator work to actually take those ideas and bring them into fruition. We certainly fit that description. She, her husband, Kevin Shaw, their team member, Sydney Wiseman, and their wonderful team at Blue Maven jumped in and helped us make progress we so desperately needed to make at Zor Forum, and they joined us as equity partners there. And Ashley and I worked so very well together in that visionary integrator sort of dual role, where I serve that visionary seat and she does the integrator piece, that we thought once I had this next chapter in mind and had more time available to commit to partnerships that I had built, we felt like we would replicate those roles on the Blue Maven side. So I'm excited to announce as of today that I am serving in that visionary role for the Blue Maven team, and will work alongside Ashley to fuel all of our goals on the Zor Forum and the Blue Maven front.
And in your spare time, tell us about the new piece of the puzzle that's a first for you, I think, because up until now, as my recollection tells me, everything you've done in franchising has really been at the Zor level. But now you're approaching coaching as well, are you not? That's taking you to another plane, isn't it?
Exactly right. Look, when I was thinking of charting my own path and moving into my next chapter post 919, my desire and my intent was, with everything I did, to be working alongside people that I had a great deal of respect and admiration for, and a great deal of trust in the relationships I'd built with them, similar to what I have, Stan, with you, Eric, and Dave, with Ashley and Kevin and the Blue Maven team. I have with Danielle Wright, who used to be and worked for many years as a chief development officer for premium service brands, stellar service brands, College Hunks, and some other businesses. And her husband, Tim Parmeter, who has built this phenomenal coaching ecosystem within the IFPG network called FranCoach, where he's assembled about a dozen coaches to come in and take advantage of what he has learned over many, many years of helping aspiring business owners find the right franchise fit for them and that coaching and consultant role. And when I was sort of thinking about what I wanted to do to expand my reach and influence and give of myself to the franchising community, when I learned there was another opportunity for me to work alongside Danielle and Tim in this FranCoach community and use my 15 plus years of experience to help bring more aspiring business owners into the franchising space with their support and their guidance from what they've learned doing that for many years, I couldn't help but be super excited about the opportunity to join the FranCoach team as well as a coach myself.
I'm just super curious, Graham, as to where the hours in the day are going to come from for you to juggle all these balls. You're going to be a circus act, man.
I wouldn't say that's any different than what I was doing as the president of a 100-person marketing agency. I'm used to grinding out long hours and having a number of different projects and priorities in the air. I guess that's just a professional ADD that you develop being part of the agency world for many years. But there's a way for me to manage this really well, and it's already started to come to fruition. All the relationships, contacts, people that I know in the franchising space, I have something that I can offer them as I serve as sort of the face of a number of companies here and go tap into my network and follow up with supplier partner friends, franchisors. My job always has been and will continue to be here, making strong connections and trying to help and support as many people as I can. And when I'm calling franchisors that I've known for a long time, obviously we can offer them a wonderful opportunity to learn from others like them within our Zor Forum mastermind community. I can offer to work with our Blue Maven team to support and fill any holes or gaps that they have as they continue to try to grow their franchise. And then, of course, I can ask them to let me know if they ever have any strong, viable, awesome candidates that aren't a fit for their business model for whatever reason. So I can help them find a different sort of home base as a franchise owner going out there and starting a new business. So yes, it's a lot to manage, but that is not scary to me. All of these things I have a passion for and a desire to do well. And there's a lot of overlap between the things that I'm working on.
Tell you what, let's park it there for a moment, take a quick break. And on the other side of that break, let's come back and talk about the franchise world as you see it through your eyes and perspective. Post-COVID world that we're living in, and a lot of changes that are taking place in this last year with roll-ups and with consolidations. Let's get a look at the world through your point of view on the other side of a quick break. This is Stan Friedman on Franchise Today with Graham Chapman. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And the conversation continues today with Graham Chapman wearing many, many new hats and a few that haven't changed, Graham, like the ones you wear at IFA, I'm assuming will stay as was, correct?
That's correct. So with my role at Blue Maven and honestly, what we do on the Zor Forum side, operating both as a franchisor and a supplier member to the franchising space, I am proud to retain my role on IFA's Supplier Forum Advisory Board, serving on their executive committee at the member at large. Just recently got back from the IFA board meetings, summer board meetings out in Nashville, where we talked about all the hot topics that I know we'll get into here in a minute. But that is really one of the most rewarding things that I get to do, having a voice, having the opportunity to represent all the suppliers in the franchising space, as that's how I've contributed to the IFA community for more than 15 years. So continuing to advance franchising as a whole and make sure supplier partners as one of the three legs of the stool that keeps franchising what it is and where it is, franchisors, franchisees, and suppliers, doing our part to serve franchisors and franchisees well.
I'm going to ask you in just a minute to give us your perspective on the balance of this year and the next 1 or 2 years ahead. But before I go there, I want to ask you to talk a minute or two about a couple of the programs that Zor Forum has facilitated at recent industry events and to give a little peek at what's upcoming at the Fay Gray Franchise Summit in Minneapolis next month.
This is one of my favorite things to talk about.
I know
Zor
that.
Forum safaris. We gathered for the first time last year before the Franchise Leadership and Development Conference with all of our Zor Forum members and some prospective members coming together for a Falcons Commanders game in the really impressive Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta before spending a few days doing mastermind meetings and enjoying a phenomenal golf course at Champions Retreat in Augusta, Georgia. We've put a few of these together, as Stan mentioned, the most recent being in advance of Leanne Caruso and Michael Hyam's inaugural Let's Grow conference in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where we got people together the day before the conference for a mastermind meeting and a wonderful day out on the Merido golf course. I have to give a special shout out to Christian Pillett from Transitive for helping to facilitate that wonderful day. And then we had the excellent opportunity to have our particular style of mastermind meetings woven in to the content of that conference. So we got to display our very impressive and I guess value generating forum style meeting structure during that conference itself, where people got to choose between checking out some speakers or coming and being part of one of our 3 mastermind sessions at that show. And then as Stan mentioned, our next safari will be in late July in Minneapolis in advance of the Faegre Summit, where we will put together another combo mastermind session and special event to show aspiring members the power of being part of our Zor Forum community.
A ton of extra work. Just pile that on. They say when you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And I don't know anybody anymore, Graham, that's taking more on and getting it done, as are you. So kudos to you and thank you for all that you do in support not only of the Zor Forum community, but the IFA world as well. So with all that said, Graham, what are you seeing in the balance of this year? What kind of momentum, changes, and shifts are you feeling in the franchise world post-COVID?
Well, this is a particularly interesting time to become both a fractional executive and a broker, considering what's happening in the IFA community. The whole sort of tenor, I guess, and theme of 2024 seems to be what is and is not responsible franchising. I guess in both worlds that I'm entering, the fractional executive space and the coach and broker space, as I mentioned, there have been some bad actors that sell with no remorse or no regard, that move a little too quickly and are not keeping responsible franchising at the top of mind. So I guess on the fractional side, I guess the challenge has been that there are some fractional folks that are not being perfectly forthcoming or honest about who they are representing and how they are participating in various events and shows and communities in the franchising space. And I think the only ask is that when fractional folks are going to meetings, attending events, participating in the franchising space, that they're clearly articulating who they are with in those moments and I guess which hat they're wearing that day and why, and not trying to take advantage of any loophole, so to speak. On the broker consultant side, I encourage all the leaders, the coach and broker networks to continue speaking with and working in tandem and in close concert with the IFA to make sure that as legislation is moved forward and different initiatives are pushed or advanced, that it's crystal clear how coaches and brokers should be interacting with and engaging with aspiring business owners, and make sure we're doing our part to only encourage candidates to enter franchise models that fit their financial capacity, that fit their personal and professional lifestyle preferences, and that we do our part to do our jobs well and not just do things quickly. The IFA is doing its part to protect the good actors and make sure that any aspiring business owner getting into the franchising space knows who they're working with and what type of business they'll be getting involved with. It's California Bill 919. I think that it would be helpful if people who are involved in advancing that legislation did spend time learning the ins and outs of what good brokers and coaches and consultants do to help aspiring business owners find the right type of franchise fit. Yeah, I guess that's where I'd give you now, Stan.
All very well said, Graham, and much appreciated. And don't think that I missed that bill number. What was that, 919?
It is fairly interesting that is Bill 919. Yeah.
There are no coincidences, Graham.
No doubt.
All right. So, Graham, I want to touch on something as we get close to the finish line here. There's a parallel line here between what you explained to us at the front of this interview about your years at 919 and involvement in the family business. And the parallel to that I want to draw is what's going on in the franchise world today at the speed of light, with the roll-ups and consolidations and the umbrella companies going up and founder-led businesses losing some of that culture that let those companies grow to the size that private equity and others became interested in them. What do you say to the audience, largely in part of those types of franchisors, when one side of their brain gets excited by the lure of money and having a liquidity event, but the other side of the brain isn't thinking about how their role in the day-to-day is going to change, who they report to instead of having report to them changes, and the changes to the culture of the business in terms of the franchise or in franchisee relationships. Some of that is pretty parallel. Why don't we hear from what your thoughts on that look like as somebody who's kind of lived through something pretty much like that just in the recent past?
I strongly encourage any business owner out there to start with the end in mind, or have a plan for transition whenever the time is right. Be that extending and carrying on a family business, handing that over to a different family member when it's time for them to move on to something new, or, as you mentioned, attracting the attention and the investment of a private equity group or a family office. Any can be good outcomes, any can be the right outcome. We were fortunate at 919 to attract the attention and the partnership of a wonderful family office and investment backer. It worked extremely well for us for a number of years. I'm proud of what my dad was able to accomplish with my support, with my stepmother's support, Sue Unello, and so many others at 919. It was the right time to pursue that type of partnership and move into the next phase of 919's growth. We had definitely some challenges associated with bringing multiple companies together. Growing from a 25-person agency to more than 100 is no easy feat. I'm proud of what we did, and I think we did it as well as we could to do that well. And I guess what I would advise anyone trying to attract the attention of that type of private equity partner is to be very thorough in your diligence. Keep the fact that these are still people relationships in mind. Do you believe that the people you're going into business with are good people that really understand the importance of human relationships and the humanity of business in mind? Of course, everyone's going to be pursuing profits. That company investing in you is going to be doing so to try to grow the business so they can sell that in the future as well. And all that makes perfect sense. But as you're going about doing that, do you trust that partner coming in is going to treat your folks well, do the right thing? Do they have experience working with other franchisors? Do they have a good support system established so your corporate team members and your franchisees will get the support that they need? And do you have the confidence that even if the culture is going to change some, that it's still one that really represents your brand well and allows you to maintain the momentum and the good stuff that you've done for the many years you spent building your brand? I don't think private equity is this dark force that is going out trying to do bad things. Of course, there are challenges that can be faced no matter how you go about building, growing, selling, and planning for the future of your business. But there's ways for all of this to go well. There are a lot of different platform companies, private equity companies out there involved in franchising who are doing excellent things. Just make sure you're intentional and thorough with all of your work as you try to go to market to sell the business and partner with the people that you connect with best.
All sage advice, Graham, and I appreciate you sharing it out with us here today on Franchise Today. Graham, we're coming to the finish line. Before I ask you for contact info, what have I not asked you today that you wished I did?
I just want to share, because you sort of asked me before how I sort of expect to wear all these different hats and how I can make it work. I mean, really, all I'm focused on, all I have or ever have been focused on is trying to add value to any relationship that I have and doing what I can to give of myself first and to try to facilitate really powerful connections. I guess I would call those clutch connects coming through in a difficult moment or helping solve a difficult problem by putting smart people in touch with each other. Stan, I know you're very much built of the same fabric where we know what we know and we definitely know what we don't know. But thankfully, we have a deep network of wonderfully talented people that if anyone that we know in our personal and professional life, if they have a question or a challenge, it's unlikely we can solve their problem directly, but we certainly know someone who can, and we love making those connections.
And that we do. And it would occur to me, I guess, Graham, that while you're going to be peeling back the page and starting a few new chapters here, it really isn't that you're starting to do anything new. You're just going to continue being who you are, doing what you do, and doing it in a different way, shape, or form. But you really just articulated that as much as things sound like they're changing, things are really pretty much staying the same.
You nailed it.
Perfect. Well, Graham, contact info is essential because for any number of reasons, there are going to be different people now who want to get to know you. How about telling them how to find you?
You can check out all of our different websites, FranCoach.net, bmave.com, zorforum.com, obviously. And just to keep it easy, if anyone wants to reach out to me for any reason, I can be found or reached at graham@zorforum.com.
And of course, you've got a pretty powerfully strong LinkedIn community as well, correct?
Whiskey Wednesday forever.
There it is. We got through almost this whole interview without even bringing up a word about Whiskey Wednesday. Talk about that for half a second.
Well, we've talked about 4 other roles, my supplier forum board involvement, everything at Zor Forum, Blue Maven, and FranCoach. But my 5th hat that I will continue wearing, that's one of my favorite, is trying to be the leader of our vibrant Whiskey Wednesday community, where that's something that came out of COVID too. My dad, David Chapman, founder of 919 Marketing, Pete Baldine, who, yes, is the president of Moran Family of Brands, but I think is most proud to say that he is the king of Whiskey Wednesday, and that he very much is, where they said, look, we're all trapped at home. How do we continue to spread positivity and stay connected while we can't travel to events and conferences? It was pretty easy. They both and many others enjoy having a cocktail at the end of the day and sharing something positive or reaching out to someone they care about in franchising. So the viral campaign turned out to be a viral social media campaign called Whiskey Wednesday, where every Wednesday we sort of did the ice bucket challenge, where me and others who were early adopters would post a video, say what whiskey or drink we were having that evening, send some positive vibes out to the franchising community at large, and then challenge someone else to do a similar post the next week. It grew and grew and grew for many, many months. We've endured that and did some live events, many live events in and around conferences to get people together to raise a toast to the awesome people and awesome elements of franchising. And still to this day, I see someone new posting their very first Whiskey Wednesday toast and salute to someone in franchising each and every week. It's one of my favorite things.
Well, Graham, this has been a fun interview. It's been a great conversation. As always, I learned something from my guests every week. And as long as I've known you, I learned from you here today as well. Can't thank you enough for what you've done for us at Zor Forum. It was great seeing you here in Atlanta this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in Minneapolis at the end of July. Graham Chapman, broker, fractional executive, good friend, and trusted peer. Thanks for being here with us today, Graham.
Stan, appreciate you, man. Thank you as always.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Next week, we'll take a break for the 4th of July holiday. But when we return on July 10th, it will be with the first of a 2-part special on how certain founder-led brands may qualify to create their liquidity event without taking on private equity, selling out, or recapitalizing debt. In part 1 of this intriguing discussion, you'll hear from Sean Morrison, president and CEO of Diversified Royalty, who will tell us how all of this works. Then, the following week, on Wednesday, July 17th, I'll be joined by David Earl, CFO at Stratus Building Solutions, the leading providers of green janitorial services in the USA, and a company who successfully entered into such a transaction with Diversified Royalty. This is leading-edge information, and you don't want to miss it. So join us on Wednesday, July 10th, when Part 1 drops at noon Eastern. Until then, please have a safe 4th of July holiday, and I'll see you back here on the 10th. I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.